Immediately behind me we have one 30-foot long row of beans. Here we have one large bucket. The task at hand, fill this large bucket with that row of beans. Let's get started. Actually, I've already got my bucket about 1/3 full, but I had some camera issues, okay? Don't judge me. So yeah, great looking beans here, by the way. Just give you a good idea here of what we're looking at. There they are. Beans! Lots of them. Right there. Just all over the place. So yeah, I'm going to get one large bucket of beans off these beans and then do a cannon. And as you can see, there's just plenty of beans in here to pick. They're just like hanging full, lots and lots of beans. I will easily get this bucket filled up and do a canning. Okay. Okay, so there you have it, sports fans. One level bucket of beans. Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of a shower out here while I was picking, but not too bad. So I could have easily picked more off of these vines, but one level bucket, which equals about a cannon, is just like all I wanted to deal with today. So let's go snap these up and start canning them. And assisting me here on the bean cannon project today is my lovely assistant, mother of Blinkazoid. She is very gung-ho on the bean cannon today, aren't you?
Oh yes. Sleep in between things.
When I was younger, I take skateboarding. My husband's 43 and he just went and bought a skateboard.
Sarah Snyder here, and I hope you will be too. Weekdays at 9 a.m. The Triad live and local on the Triad News Radio, AM 600, 1200 WSJS.
Make a note right now to be right here when once again.
Okay, here at the Blinkazoid cannery, we're all about sanitation. So we run cold water in here and rinse them off real good, and then we pour them in there. Then we rinse that off real good, and then we pour everything back in here. Then we pour it back in here. How many times do you do that?
About 5 times.
We're all about sanitation here at the Blinkazoid cannery. Okay, so you get the general idea. Then we'll run water in that container and sort of rinse them, and then, as we say, put it back in here, and then run more water in this container. This existing water here will be poured out, of course, and then the beans will be reasonably clean. And you probably can't tell it here, but water here is just a little bit dingy looking. So by the time we get done, the water will be, clean looking after we wash it. Okay, and this was the 5th wash in here, the rinse water from it, and as you can see, it looks really clean. So the beans are now clean. The next step is going to be, we're going to run water in here, put them on the stove, and turn the stove on, heat them up, and stuff will kind of float to the top and all, a little bit of debris. Then you get a spoon and kind of scoop all the stuff off the top. We're not going to parboil them, which is, we're not going to boil them real. Well, I'm a little confused about this parboiling deal, because you are going to heat them up in here.
Heat them up.
And isn't that parboiling?
Parboiling is when you let them cook on the stove for about 10 minutes. And then you take them off and you wash them one more time before you put them in the can, and let them heat back up and then put them in the can.
Oh, okay. So parboiling, you rinse them off one more time. Here we're just going to be heating them up and scooping a little trash off the top and then putting them in the cans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's almost done.
Alright, so here we've got our beans rinsed off about 5 times. Got them on the stove, got them on high. And gonna let them cook a little while and get a spoon and scoop all the what trash floats to the top off of them. And then put them in jars. Okay, what are we doing now? Putting a little
water so we can heat your cans up. It may keep them from breaking, I don't know.
Okay, this will wind up taking 7 jars. These are narrow mouth jars here.
One more.
Yeah, one more.
First, you put 2 quarts of water in.
Okay, this has got two quarts of water in the canner, plus a little in each jar, like that much in each jar for the time being. And like I say, there's about 2 quarts in the canner itself.
When you start canning, you don't leave that in the jar.
Oh, you don't leave that water in there? Okay. This is just mainly to sterilize the jars here to start with. So when we start canning, that'll be poured out of the jar.
I'm just going to lay this up top. Sort of it lined up.
And by the way, this is one of those canners here that has one of those weighted type of petcocks. It's not got the dial. So we'll be canning on 10 pounds, right?
Uh-huh.
So we'll turn, it's got a 5, a 10, and a 15, I guess, on it. So we'll be doing it on the 10-pound one. And here's our little pan here that we're going to be heating up our rings in. And lid, we do the lids too, don't we?
Yeah.
We'll be heating up the rings and the lids. We'll be bringing them to a boil in this little bitty pan right here. The rings and the lids which go on the jars. And also when you're fooling, you know, like I was mentioning before, one of the standard things you have when you're doing canning, you need one of these enamel pots always. And here's a smaller one. And these are my buckets that I pick in, and then I use them whenever I'm processing the beans. And these, of course, nest in each other. So it's always good to have a large number of these, like 5 or 6 of them, where you can use these, and then when you're done they can all nest in each other. So that's the best way to have that.
Whenever you have a breather to sit down in between canning, you have a nice pinwheel.
Okay, the beans have been boiling here in this big enamel pot for about 10 or 15 minutes. We were gonna scrape off any scum that was floating to the top with this big spoon, but the beans were extremely clean, really, from the garden, and then after it was rinsed, it was really clean, so there's really nothing to scoop up. So we're ready to put them in jars. Alright, we've had our jars heating up here for 10 or 15 minutes. Did that come to a boil, or did you not turn them on that?
To start, I come to a boil.
Okay, so we did put these to a boil.
Couple in.
Okay. And that small amount of water that's in there, you're going to pour it, you're going to wind up pouring it on in here?
Some of it.
Some of it. Okay, so we started out with 2 quarts of water in this big canner, and just a couple of inches of water in each jar, and we're going to pour a little bit of water from each jar back into the canner. And we've got our little funnel type of thing. I'll show this funnel here, kind of a big mouth funnel, specifically for this type of thing. So we're going to pack our beans down in our jars. Okay, a couple of spoonfuls of beans, and then how much salt was that?
Teaspoon.
1 teaspoon of salt. And she always prefers to put that towards the bottom, not on the bottom, but towards the bottom rather than the top for some reason. She doesn't really know exactly why.
I'll forget it if I don't.
Okay. She said she forgets it if she puts it toward the top. Sometimes she puts it in the bottom and then says, "Did I put any salt in this or not?" Quite often that happens. But anyway, this is the method called hot packing. You can put your beans in your jar before you even cook it, which we never do that. For one thing, You cannot get nearly as much in a jar when you cold pack it as you can when you hot pack it. So if you're going to go through all this trouble anyhow, you might as well get your jars packed good and tight with beans. And while she's doing this, I'm over there working on some other beans is what I'm doing. So yeah, this will wind up being a pressure cooker full of beans that we'll be eating tonight. And this here will be 7 jars, hopefully, a full can of beans. And yeah, that's Sean Hannity going on in the background. One of my mom's right wing wackos that she listens to all the time. They have brainwashed her, right? Haven't they brainwashed you?
No. They're good people.
They're good people. They lie though. I mean, every other word out of Rush's mouth and Sean Hannity's mouth is just a lie, isn't it?
You're lying.
Now, what do you think about this health care they're trying to pass? Aren't they lying about that? Isn't Rush lying about that?
No.
There's no such thing as a death panel. I mean, that's not in the bill.
I am not saying anything bad against any of them people. Might come back to haunt me.
Any of who? Any of which people?
Democrats or Republicans might come back to haunt me.
Okay. All right, we've had these heating up too, the lids and the rings.
And they are hot.
And they're hot. Okay, there's the lid. And each year you have to use brand new lids. Never, this is the lid. Never reuse a lid. That's a ring. You can reuse a ring as many times as you want to. Although if they get a little bit rusty, it's best to not use them because then they're harder to get off. But yeah. And how much water do we have in that? In that jar that you just unpacked?
It comes right over the top.
Just right to the top of the beans.
Right over the top.
Just,
A little.
okay, right over the top of the beans, just a little. I'll pull it out here. And show you. Well, you can't even, okay, it's all the way to the top of the beans. So you don't even really see the top of the water level because it's up, I guess, higher than that
And we do that
ring.
7 times.
Yep, do that 7 times. Okay.
Just go on about your business.
Okay. Okay, we've got 6 quarts done and 1 quart yet to do. We will have just a few beans left over, quite a few beans left over in the pot, more than I expected. They will be eaten. Let no bean go uneaten. And we'll be putting the water in there all the way up above the beans. Like so.
If you don't, the beans on top dries out.
Okay, the beans on top dries out if you don't get them covered with water. 1 lid, and as I say, you never reuse a lid, but you can reuse a ring. That's a ring. Reuse a lid, you might get botulism.
Show how pretty it is.
And it's a beautiful can of beans getting ready to go into the pressure cooker. Not the pressure cooker, but the canner. Number 7. There we go. Okay, and here the top of the canner goes on here. This here has always seemed a little backwards to me. Like so. Like so. Some pressure cookers have a dial gauge. I wait till a little steam starts coming out and then I put this don't know, with this petcock on there. So you can see it's got a 5, a 10, and a 15. And I'll be putting it on to 10 for 10 pounds of pressure for how long? For 25 minutes. 25 minutes after it starts jiggling around. And it'll be ready to take off. And then when I take it off, it'll have to stay off about 45 minutes to an hour before all the pressure is kind of released on its own. I don't just pull this off immediately, and I don't pull this off until all the pressure is out of it. The main thing that you're thinking of on all this is you don't want to have a big temperature change for your jars. Like they're really hot right now. If they cool down too quick, one of them's liable to crack or something. So you want them to cool down gradually. And we've got a pressure cooker of eating beans going right here, eating right now after they get done. And then we got our canner jiggling right here. And right here is what'll be going in the compost pile. Lots of strings and specks. We have strung and specked and strung and specked and strung and specked. Okay, this is cooked really hard. This has been jiggling for 25 minutes now, so it's time to be set off the stove. And it's extremely heavy. And it needs to be sitting on something that's where your countertop's not going to burn. We got our ceramic coasters, or whatever you want to call them, and then a towel here. Okay, there was an air conditioner on right there, so you don't need an air conditioner blowing right straight on it because you want it to cool down slowly. So I had to turn the air conditioner off, and this little petcock will stay on here 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, it's now been a little bit over an hour, so it's time to let what little bit of pressure there probably still is in here off. So let's see what we got here. It's best to kind of do it a little bit gradually. Never do all your pressure like all at once, but it probably wouldn't hurt because it has been over an hour though. As I've said, the main thing is you want to avoid drastic, rapid temperature changes. I've got a TV tray here, eating tray, and I'm going to put a towel over it. Okay, so let's take this lid off of here. All right, let's set our jars out from here to here. Wow, that is hot. Hot jars. Okay, let's show a close-up of these things here. Whoa, I heard one can lid seal right then. Let's take a look. I doubt if we can tell looking at the top of these can lids. Actually, I think all of the can lids except this one right there has sealed. I don't have good enough lighting here to see. That one's got kind of a convex shape to it, and the other ones you can't see it, I'm sure. Well, maybe you can. It looks kind of concave, but and maybe I left it. I put them on. I didn't really time it. I think maybe it's been in the canner a little more than an hour. Is why some of them have already sealed and why that one seals so rapidly there. Yeah, that one wound up with a little less water in it than it should actually. Those beans that's up above that water will wind up maybe turning a little color later on, so might eat that can there first. But one thing I was wanting to do, and if I run my mouth too much I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to take this one jar right here, take it downstairs, and I've got a camera set up. I was gonna try to have a camera set up on it and film it as it's sealed, and then show it in slow motion, and maybe you could see a little something, maybe you can't, but let me do that right now. And I always put towels over them because of what I was saying earlier. You don't want any rapid temperature changes or anything. You just want them to cool off very slowly. Okay, so that's it. Bye, everybody. And also, whenever they, like in the morning, I won't fool with them anymore. It's late at night here. I'll fool with them in the morning. Take the rings off of them. When you first go to take the rings off, they may be kind of tight and won't come off. Don't really force it, because try it again like an hour or two after that. It might be where it won't come off at first, and then you might go back an hour or two later and it'll just go whoop, just right off. I mean, I've got one of these strap things that you can really put a lot of pressure on it, but it's best not to fool with it too much. You might mess your seal up that's on the lid if you're fooling around trying to take the ring off too much. And I do prefer to get the rings off of them within a couple of days anyway, because if the rings stay on there, sometimes they'll kind of rust a little and just be extraordinarily difficult, like, you know, a couple of months from now to take off. So it is best to get the rings off of there within a couple of days. Just don't put too much pressure on it, and just, every so often, every time you walk by it, just grab one and do like that, and eventually it'll come off just real easy. You wouldn't think it would, because I mean, it'll seem really hard at first to get it off, but then you'll walk by one, an hour later that you put a lot of pressure on and couldn't get off, and an hour later you'll pick it up and it'll just go off with no problem. All right, that's it, and bye everybody.